psychological effect. And the psychological effect then impacts their productivity. It products their relationship. It precludes their creativity. And so when you get into board meetings, the things that should have been able to be able to be found from them, that you be able to pour out from them, that leader that should be able to pull out from them, there is a limitation of it because they're worried about how they're appearing. They're worried about other things. They can't bring 100% of their person into the room. So research has found that areas and open areas that cultures within the workplace that support identity, full identity, bringing your full self, whatever that looks like, and not just the EEO on the board because legally you have to, but really because their culture allows it, yields a greater produce and productivity from those individuals. So, but it all starts and manifests within the religious confines that they learn this behavior. And so a person who submits to the type of religious confines and constructs that does not accept, brings that does not accept into the workplace. And even though they're limited in saying their beliefs, they're limited in expressing verbally, their behaviors still mirrors the belief that they have internally. So being able to work from the inside out is best method, because there's no way that you're going to have a belief, a strong belief against something and actually be receiving ethically of it in another setting. It does not work like that. Your mind, even in cognitive dissonance, will only go to the true belief of you. Even though your actions, you may try and act a certain way, the core belief and value of you will bleed through and blend in, and it will still be detected. So these persons, the LGBT community, as they go into the workforce, need to have social support. They need to have things that help them be who they are and know that they are valued. So in the research that I did, we in our survey and other surveys that actually research that has gone before have found out that many African American religious persons find seeking help from a professional to be threatening. They find that if they go to, it seems almost harmful, like seeking counseling from a non-professional religious or spiritual advisor is already harmful and was associated with higher odds of suicide attempts. So the fact that they went to the pastor and went to the mother or the elder of the church, they're not actually trying to tell you and to be able to properly diagnose or assess or give you the proper instruments to say whether this is, depression or what scale of even depression it may be, or that you need to, what type of programming you need to get in, or what type of advisement, and put you on a path that will allow you to be holistically treated. They're only going to give you the limited amount of spiritual thought that they have, but they won't know, even if you're having schizophrenic episodes or all of those different things, they won't be able and to let you know that this is what's happening and this is what, they don't have that skill set. So what ends up happening a lot of times, they begin to demonize and they begin to call it something other, and they will even try to have exorcisms to try and cast out something that's actually a mental illness that may have been hereditary, passed down, or autism, and think that it's a demon when in fact it is just something that needs to be treated in a totally different manner. But because of the fact that there's this stigma about going to see a mental health professional, the option is to only seek their advisement. And because they don't recommend you to go, because in some instances they feel like they're failing if they're not able to properly do what they knew they were told by their mother and their, so it becomes a generational thought pattern embedded into the culture that this is the way that it happens. And so we find that even suicide rates have gone up and has surged because of these issues that have not been properly taken care of. So as we move forward, even the prevailing negative association between religion and psychological health for LGBT community. There is a prevailing negative connotation even in the LGBT community. Findings suggest that the LGBT individuals and this relationship might be misunderstood without the inclusion of positive faith experiences and intervening variables more proximal to psychological health. So, parishioners and leaders of the church taught that one's faith and religious resources is sufficient to address psychological needs for some who may be under considerable duress. And these methods purport the stigma and potentially lead clients away from the professional psychological services that is critical. So, although a lot of in the research we found that a lot of the LGBT community could not or felt alienated and could not properly talk to their parishioners, they also did not want to go see a professional about what they were going through, about their internalized homonegativity or about any other health conditions, mental health conditions that they were having. So it is the findings suggest that sexual minorities may strongly benefit from seeking out psychotherapy along with having the conversation with corresponding therapists regarding how their religious organizations' attitude and behaviors towards sexual minorities can impact them individually. So even I'm a part of the AACC, which is the American Association of Christian Counselors. So breaking down even the first rudiment stigma that there is either or choice, where either you get the church counseling and non-professional help, or you go to the professional help. We're making it commingle. We're bringing them together because they are together to service the holistic person. So the thought is, and the hope is that these individuals will go and seek and have a conversation, because religion is not replaceable. You're not going to get rid of it. It's not going to come away from you. You may walk away from it, but most of the research that has gone before shows that even when the person leaves the church, they don't particularly leave the faith. They just have a mistrust of the actual participation in a said church, in a stated church, but the relation that they have with God, their spirituality, has not waned. So these persons, we are encouraging them to be able to seek the help with their professional and have the faith-based conversation with them. Have it where it is included within their programming and their roadmap to success and their roadmap to mental wholeness and stability. So studies also show that men are less willing to seek help than women and give self-disclosure, which is another problem that has been happening in the church, that studies have shown that an alarming percentage of African Americans believe that disclosing personal information to a counselor leaves them more at a personal risk than benefit, and that this perception among the participants disclosing distressful information on a regular basis is something not that one should not do. So they actually literally believe that they should not be able, or they should not have to disclose how they're feeling. It somehow weakens them, and especially in the male population, it weakens who they are. It weakens that I have to admit that there is a struggle, there is a stress, or I don't know how to deal, or I don't know how to go on. Somehow it takes a knock at their existence about who they are, about the surety of who they are. It minimizes and diminishes their quality of existence by telling a professional. But having that cognitive dissonance was also a prevailing concern, that their decision not to disclose their sexuality within the church serves as a protective measure against ridicule, gossip, and shame for themselves as their families' disclosure meant the possibility of loss of community and familial support system. So a lot of that community felt that if I disclose what's really going on or how I feel or what I'm going through, or if it's whether it's a struggle or a decision or it's who I am, that I will be ostracized and shamed for it, and gossip will arise from that. But if you think about it, that goes right to the corporate America as well. That same scenario is played out in corporate America, where you're walking into the workplace and you have to behave a certain type of way if you feel that you won't be accepted, if you'll be ostracized, or if you'll be ridiculed, or even worse, if you won't get the promotion because you perceive that that this environment is not mentally health conscious or aware about how they treat the LGBTQ community. And so having that support system, having those ways is ways we want to talk about how to mitigate the mental health um, um, ministry. So one thing that we found that was very interesting, and I'll touch on a different point that kind of works with it, is that across the board, and it was even in my research, I broadened it a little bit beyond the African American, but even in the Hispanic cultures and other Southern Baptist cultures, that people felt better and felt more strengthened and felt more engaged, even if they weren't going to go see a professional mental health provider, that a support group would be better, that they didn't feel alone and feel alienated, and that in and of itself actually de-stressed and brought down some of the angst and the internal maladies that were happening inside that person, that they were able to now be more functional, feel more alive, because they had a place to belong. They felt supported, they felt agreed. And even in the in groups and out groups, they still, even though they were out in the religious setting, in the out group is what I'm saying. So ostracized, they, even being in, the real core of them was out. So they felt this tugging of two personalities or two existences, that they were lying as one part, and then but they held the truth, but then were able to at least go with their friends or to a support group and allow that part to be exemplified and accepted and loved. And so that gave them a better sense, but it did still have a stressor, because they were then bifurcated in their own personalities. Or when they would go to work, the same thing would happen. They would have to put on this type of person or hide a part of who they are instead of bringing their full selves. And so that limited their scope and capability while at work. But even when they did add just a support group, it did actually help them in their stressors and in their mental health responses. It began to heal and modify itself for the better. So our first thing is offering the in-house support groups. Now, interestingly enough, I found as we were doing all of our in the research, and we were at the end doing all of the numbers, the stats, and all of that, we found that actually those who were highly entrenched into religion and considered themselves to be very, very religious and spiritual did not want to associate themselves with a church-based support group, that they were totally against going to a church housed or even connected with a church support group for the LGBT community, which made perfect sense, because if they're fearful of being rejected and ostracized and all of those things, then they will not want to sign up, especially if it's not anonymous, to be in a support group whereby it's only going to shoot themselves in the foot, and by the way of letting people know that I'm having this problem and I'm in a support group, it's only going to not mitigate but exasperate the very thing that they're trying to hide. So even in um, when you're doing at workplaces and things like that, if are support groups that are able to happen, then you still give that person an out. It's not connected to their church or to other things. They can have a safe space to come and get the support that they need to be able to be the holistic person, um, in their whole be the holistic person to operate fully and know that they're safe and know that they don't have to hide. Okay, so now these are your employees. This whole basis it's inescapable. So whether, even though it may start in the systemic stigma may be placed and originates in a religious setting, it still migrates its way. It still finds its way into your boardrooms, into your leadership teams, into your team building exercises. It informs their behavior. So just because it's in the church does not preclude it from being in the workplace. It is in the workplace just as much as it is in the corporate America. So as unto being corporate America, you have the responsibility to be able to engage them, to let them know, to have those support groups, have those places that they're able to come in and be themselves, be that outside source that maybe they can't have it in other ways, but you being that provider, you may be that light, that beacon that allows them to be their best self. So in my research, there were different, when we asked what church affiliation or what type of church affiliation they had, there were, some Protestants, there were, all of the different sects, and then the sects of church, and then there was the affirming church as well among them. And the affirming church actually exuded the best answers as to the willingness to seek professional help, the attitude about self-disclosure. And that's because when you look at the whole composite of the tests and research, that they were able to be themselves. They were able to have a source where like-minded people could come and not judge them and not ridicule them. They felt safe. They could be who they believed that they were as they evolved in their walk of life. So with that, that is actually the end. I have finished just a few minutes before, and I want to see if, so she is here.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Glover. So, you gave us so much information here in terms of like the research and the background behind all of this. If you had to kind of do like a wrap up summary in terms of just helping people understand the really the critical need right now to not, again, the espoused theory of separation of the church and state, but if you had to give us like a 30-second or 60-second synopsis of why corporate or any community organization, any kind of aspiring leader, and even going past just Christianity, going into just understanding people's intersections of their identity expression and their religious expression, and why allowing that authentic expression to thrive is beneficial. What would your 30-second synopsis be?
Yes. So we're taking away all of the different labels and titles as into whether it's religious or whether it's nonprofit, any of that. When you think about being a leader, period, you should be, a leader has followers, right? So and a leader is concerned about that team, about who's following them. Being able to know that they're holistic only makes them make them a better team builder with you because we're all in this together. So taking away that stigma, being that place because you don't know where their intersectionalities have come from, and it doesn't even matter. The truth is, it doesn't matter where it happened, whether it's home, church, playground. It doesn't matter. What you need to be able is to be that beacon, to be that light, to be that place to say wholeness is available. I accept you where you are, and point you in a direction that allows you to be able to be comfortable enough to seek the help you need, to take that stigma off.
Okay, I love that. I have a follow-up now. So
Okay,
let's say I am this leader and I want to be this holistic, inclusive leader, and I have a diverse team, right?
correct.
How do I, as a leader, start having these conversations about such sensitive topics to my team
Yes.
members?
Yes, number one, and I have a YouTube channel that I love that I just launched. It's about 5 months. So I talk about, I'm a diversity leader. So this is what I talk about in the workplace. So the first thing I would say is that you have to understand your diversity, who you are as diverse, because it doesn't matter. I know we say diversity, and we usually tailor it to a groupings of people. So the black people or the LGBTQ or the Hispanic, we have that, but it doesn't matter where you are actually diverse in yourself because I myself, okay, being an LGBT person, that makes me diverse. Being black male, that makes me diverse. But even beyond that, take that away. Me growing up in the Midwest, that makes me diverse. Me having a doctorate, that makes me diverse. Like when you bring all these layers, understanding yourself as diverse helps you to have empathy towards others' diversity. It makes you sensitive. So when you understand diversity as personal and not as a legal thing or ethical standpoint, no, but as a human, it actually sets you up to have a conversation because people more than not understand your energy versus you may even mess up the words and not have it all together, but they really can, unless they're just trying to, but they can actually feel that you're actually in this with them, that you're trying to understand. So then there's different techniques to be able to have that conversation, but to celebrate is the number one thing I think that we don't do on a thing. We can talk about building policies, we can talk about having, sensitive trainings, but when you celebrate it, it tells the culture that this is something we don't just tolerate. We love this. This is who we are. This is what we do. So being able to not just say, okay, so we're going to change all the language to make sure that we're sensitive, which is needed, please do. But when you're able to say 5 minutes, we're going to create a story about this diversity thing that happened, it actually it penetrates much further, lasts much longer. And of course, who doesn't love a good story? That's what the whole earth is built from, stories. But when you have that, you inculcate into your culture a place of safety, saying, my differentness actually is my accessory, not the thing I need to hide. Because I need
Mm,
to and be like everybody else. But the number one thing is, as that leader, you have to go inside yourself and see all of your diversities. And because once you
absolutely.
have a true conversation with yourself, the conversation flows easily with one another.
Absolutely. I love that. My differentness is my accessory, not the thing I need to hide.
Right.
I absolutely love that. And I completely agree. I mean, you and I have had these conversations offline, and I completely agree that that journey really has to start within you, because if you don't understand yourself, how are you even going to try and understand somebody else?
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
So thank you so much for, I mean, there was, I wasn't kidding when I said this was like a whole semester's worth of education in just 50 minutes. And there was so much, there's so much to unpack in there.
It is. It is. But if we can, and I always feel like if we can start the conversation, we can have the conversation. I think that a lot of times, um, and I mean, and of course, during the 2020, what other time is there better than to have this conversation and these conversations? So I just want to firstly congratulate you again for your work, encourage you. And, of course, I'm going to put this up everywhere because I think that this is healthy and you can't cure it enough. You can't, and then our stories, even though they may be likened to each other, they have their own differentness in and of itself. So my people will listen to me like your people and your tribalists to you. But when we swap, they'll get another perspective. So the danger is only having one testimony to a group as well. When you hear the differentness, you'll understand differentness. And we are more alike than we actually are different as well.
Exactly, exactly. And that's been sort of the overarching theme for today, is that the similarities, are greater than the differences,
Yeah.
and really being radically authentic, and being vulnerable and owning that vulnerability to
Yes.
understand that we are more similar than we are different. And I love the point you brought up about celebrating. Don't
Yes.
just tolerate, celebrate it.
That's right.
I think that's such a powerful ending message for this really powerful session. So thank you again, Dr. Glover.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And for all of our listeners, whether you tune in live or watching this later, please let us know what you thought about this session. The link is on the bottom of the ticker. It is www.bit.ly/C3/C3EB survey. And if you want to get in touch with Dr. Glover and have a greater conversation, Dr. Glover's information is on his speaker page on the C3EB website. So please go check that out. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Catchwords, powered by EcoFiles, Achieve Podcast, Core Magazine, Oranexis, 30 Friends, Wistia, and the Nielsen Company for walking this walk with us so that we can make this accessible to everybody, or as many people as we can anyway. We're working on a more accessibility in the future. But on that note, we are going to take a quick bio break, and we'll be back at 3:30 in about 9 minutes with our next session. So make sure you catch us there. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Glover.